Today, I want to talk to you about how to get more flexibility in your life. I'm talking about financial flexibility. So, I work with women who often want some sort of a change in their life, a big change, because they've had a health scare or they've had some other blind side in their life that makes them want a major change. And invariably, a piece of what they're wanting is more flexibility. And one of the number one reasons that many of them say that they can't get that flexibility is because of money, because they can't afford to. So I want to talk about how to get more financial flexibility in your life so that you can use your money the way you want to and get what you need from it. And the tip is very simple, but it's also very profound. So I'm going to talk about two things today. I'm going to share the tip with you and explain how it all works. And then stick around in the video because later on I'll be explaining how to do it easily so that it's not as difficult to get it done. So I'll start off by explaining this great little tip. And it is that the gap between your burn rate and your earn rate is where your freedom lies. So I'll say that again. It's the gap that's important between your burn rate and your earn rate, because that gap is what gives you flexibility in your life. So I want to start by just so that you know what I'm talking about, burn rate. Burn rate comes from, it's a business idea of how much money you burn through every month. I define it in a very specific way, though. For me, your burn rate is the money that you have in fixed payments that are very difficult to get out of. So it's not things like Netflix where you can just cancel it one month from the next, but it's things like car payments, any consumer debt that you have, your mortgage, utilities, things that you can't just, shut off and not pay for a month. So that's your burn rate. Your earn rate is any money that can come into your account. So it's money that you earn, it might be money that you're given, it might be money from, child support, it might be money that the government gives you. Sometimes we get rebates and things like that. Anything that can go into your account is your part of your earn rate. And again, those fixed expenses are part of your burn rate. Also, part of your burn rate are your three big expenses, which generally come down to your food, because you have to pay for that every month. I'm not talking about going out for dinner. This is groceries. So it's your food, it's your transportation, and it's your shelter. So a lot of that is covered under, payments that aren't easy to cancel, except for food. So that's your burn rate. Your earn rate is how much money you have coming in, and then it's the gap in between where you have flexibility. And so, what I mean by that is when you have that big gap, you can load up that money wherever you want. So, it could go towards paying your mortgage down really fast, it can go towards increasing your retirement savings so that you can retire early. It might go into a fund that is just an emergency fund for things like your house, your car, things like that. It might be some of it allocated towards great vacations, nice clothes. It doesn't matter what it goes towards. What's important is that you get to choose where it goes. So that's where the flexibility lies. The other thing that's nice to have that money for is that you're not locked into a job at a certain pay scale either. So we've all had circumstances where maybe we have a new manager at work or the corporate culture changes, and it's just not a pleasant thing to be anymore. When you have a low burn rate and a higher earn rate, it gives you more flexibility to be able to transition out of that job. Maybe take a career gap and travel for a little bit, like I did. Or it could be, just that time to be able to say goodbye to that job and look for another one. So when I talk about this, I really do know what I'm talking about because I have managed to really decrease my burn rate and increase modestly my earn rate. So I do have a big gap. And the way I've used that is to pay down my mortgage really quickly and also to increase my retirement savings. But I also saved and put a big chunk of that money towards a career gap. So I took 8 months off and traveled the world at the tail end of COVID, which was amazing. I've also used it to pay down that mortgage fast. So I am 7 years ahead of schedule. No, 9 years, sorry, 9 years ahead of schedule to paying that mortgage off early. And then I'm also 7 years ahead of schedule for retirement. And I'm not saying that's how you should spend your gap money. You, again, it's flexibility. It's nice that you get to spend it on what you want. So what I want to talk about are some examples of that earn rate, burn rate, and how it's the gap, not the difference between the two. So you might be somebody who finds it really easy to lower your burn rate. Maybe you're somebody who has always been good with your money and prudent with your money, and so that's not difficult for you to do. But if you have a low earn rate, you're still not going to have much flexibility because you don't have that gap in between. And on the opposite end of this perspective, we hear about, movie stars and pop singers getting into trouble all the time because they have an amazingly high earn rate, but their burn rate is also through the roof and they end up getting into financial trouble. So again, what I want you to focus on is the gap. And you know yourself best. Maybe there are areas where you can really cut down that burn rate if you look at your expenses carefully. Or maybe you're somebody who has been hesitant to increase your earn rate and you think maybe you should take that next opportunity at work to earn more money. So that's what we're looking at, the gap between the burn and the earn rate. Now, I promised you that it was simple, and it is, but it's hard to do, or it can be hard to do. So I want to give you 2 tips for how to make it easier on yourself to do this. So the best way to decrease your burn rate is through gratitude. And I'll explain that to you. I read a great quote recently that talked about gratitude as expressing gratitude for things you have is falling in love with the life you already have. And it can also be the same thing for spending. So gratitude can help you fall in love with the expenses you already have, the things you're already buying, so that you're not necessarily wanting more. So one example of that I'll give you is our utility bills. So for me, utilities, it can get kind of expensive. Don't love paying that. Who does? So I made a point to bring gratitude to that. So I'll give you 2 quick examples. One is the garbage bill and garbage collection and recycling. Not something you really want to pay for. But when I was traveling in Thailand, I really saw how when you don't have good garbage collection and infrastructure and recycling, what happens to your nature. So I would be riding my scooter on small roads around the jungle and in the rice paddies and just really enjoying my time in Thailand. And you'd come around a corner and all of a sudden you'd see garbage, piles of garbage. And it's because if your government doesn't make it easy for citizens to collect that, then it ends up wherever. The other utility bill that I want to talk about that I learned to express gratitude for is the heating bill in Canada. It gets so expensive. That January, February, March heating bill is just painful to pay. But what I looked at was I spent some time in with a friend in Ireland, and heating there is so expensive that people don't really heat their houses in the winter. They just, put on extra coats and jackets and you're cold inside your house. Whereas here we pay for the heating, we have to, otherwise our pipes would freeze in the winter. But you also get that added benefit of, yeah, you put on a sweater in the winter, but nothing like what it was when I was in damp, cold Ireland, in the winter. So those are just 2 examples where I took my bills that I already have and really made a point to express gratitude for what I already had. So it just makes it a little less painful to pay those bills, and it can give you gratitude for what you already have so that you're not spending money on more. So that's your burn rate. Now, for your earn rate, how can you increase that without it being too difficult? And the key there is opportunity and seeing opportunity everywhere you go. And the way I do that is by saying, how can I? So instead of saying I can't, you flip it to how can I? And let me give you a couple of examples for that. So the first example I want to give is for me wanting to retire early. So one of the things I kept telling myself was I can't afford to retire early because then I'd lose my pension, pensionable years at work. And so I really can't even consider retiring early. And then one day I was just thinking about it and it's like, well, how could I? How could I retire early? What could I do to get income instead of that, secure pension, those years I would be giving up of pensionable service? So flipping the script from I can't to how can I gets you in problem solving mode. It helps you look forward and brings more opportunities. The next example I want to give about that increasing your earn rate and the how can I is around, let's say you have been putting off a promotion at work or moving up the ladder at work because you think, I'm maxed out already. I can't handle any added pressures on my time, so I just can't do it. And maybe that's fine. And maybe that's the best choice for you. But another way to look at it is how could I do that? So, how could I move up without work without it increasing stress and adding to workload and that kind of thing? And so, if you start to look at that, how could I do that? Well, maybe you could get more help at home. Maybe you could hire out cleaning. Maybe you could work on boundaries so that yes, you're making more and have more responsibility, but it doesn't mean that you're working longer hours and giving absolutely everything to work. So flipping that script from I can't to how can I is really a great way to increase your earn rate and look at ways to increase your earn rate. So to recap, we have our burn rate, which is paying those expenses that we can't easily get out of, and our big three, our food, our shelter, and our transportation. And then our earn rate is anything that can go into our bank account at the end of the month. It's our take-home pay or money we're given, money we receive. But what's important is not your burn rate alone or your earn rate alone. What's important is the gap between the two, because that's where you have flexibility. That's where you can start to allocate your money to wherever it is that you want it to go. You just have more choices there. And how is the best way to do that? Well, decreasing your burn rate by expressing gratitude makes it a lot easier, and increasing your earn rate by looking for opportunity and flipping I can't to how can I is a way to do that. So I'd love to hear from you. Is this giving you ideas for how to decrease your burn rate and increase your earn rate? Do the tricks that I gave you resonate with you for making that all a little bit easier? I'd love to hear from you, so please comment below. And if you did like the video, please click like and subscribe. It really helps me to be able to create more videos like this one. And if you're interested in ideas for how to pivot to early retirement or earlier than planned retirement, I do have a free resource for that. So I'll put a link below, or you can just go to karencarl.com and you can access it there. Thanks so much, and we'll see you again.